Today marks 40 years since Johnny Gosch went missing. The 12-year-old boy on his paper route vanished. All of that left behind wagon and a few newspapers.
September 5, 1982. In the quiet suburb of West Des Moines, Iowa, a 12-year-old boy stepped out into the darkness before sunrise to begin a routine he had followed many times before. He carried newspapers, pulled a small red wagon behind him, and expected to return home within a few hours. Instead, he vanished without a trace, leaving behind one of the most haunting mysteries in American history. More than 4 decades later, no one knows exactly what happened to him. This is the story of Johnny Gosch. Johnny Gosch was the kind of child every parent hoped to raise. Born on November 12, 1969, he lived with his parents, John and Noreen Gosch, in West Des Moines, Iowa. Friends and neighbors described him as polite, responsible, and mature beyond his years. He enjoyed sports, practiced karate, and maintained good relationships with classmates. Like many young teenagers of that era, he had taken on a newspaper route to earn extra money and learn responsibility. Delivering newspapers was considered a safe job for children. Neighborhoods were viewed differently in the early 1980s. Parents allowed their children to walk or ride bicycles alone. The idea that a child could disappear from a quiet suburban street in broad daylight seemed almost unimaginable. Every Sunday morning, Johnny delivered newspapers for the Des Moines Register. The Sunday edition was larger than the weekday papers and often required extra effort. Because of the heavy bundles, Johnny's father frequently accompanied him.
Johnny, when he got a little older, right after school, he would be going to the newspaper drop during the week because the Des Moines Register had an evening paper. And so we would go pick up those papers.
Together, they would pick up the newspapers, organize them, and complete the route. But on the morning of September 5, 1982, things unfolded differently. Johnny woke up early and decided not to wake his father. He reportedly told his mother that he could handle the route by himself. It was a decision that would haunt the Gosch family forever. Shortly before 6 o'clock in the morning, Johnny left his house. He wore a white sweatshirt with the logo of his karate academy, blue shorts, and sandals. He pulled his red wagon behind him as he headed toward the newspaper drop point located near the intersection of 42nd Street and Marcourt Lane. The streets were quiet. Most residents were still asleep. The sky remained dark as the first hints of dawn approached. Nothing appeared unusual about the morning. For Johnny, it was simply another Sunday. Several witnesses later confirmed seeing him at the newspaper collection point. Other paper carriers recalled Johnny sorting newspapers and preparing them for delivery. One witness remembered seeing a man sitting inside a blue car parked nearby. According to reports, the man appeared to ask Johnny for directions. At first glance, the interaction seemed harmless. Adults asking children for directions was not entirely uncommon during that period. Yet some of those who observed the exchange later admitted that something about it felt strange. Another newspaper carrier, named John Rossi, encountered Johnny during those early morning hours. Rossi later recalled Johnny mentioning that a man had asked him how to reach a certain location. Rossi noticed the blue car, but failed to memorize the license plate number. Years later, that missed detail would continue to trouble him. In an effort to recover forgotten information, Rossi even underwent hypnosis, hoping his memory could provide investigators with a breakthrough. Unfortunately, no useful details emerged. The suspicious encounters did not end there. Another witness later reported seeing a different man following Johnny as he continued his route. The individual reportedly maintained some distance, but appeared to be paying close attention to the young paperboy's movements. Still another witness recalled hearing a car door slam before observing a silver Ford speeding away from the area around the time Johnny disappeared. These accounts would become central pieces of the investigation, although none ultimately produced a suspect. As the morning progressed, customers along Johnny's route began noticing something unusual. Their newspapers had not arrived. Initially, some assumed the deliveries were simply running late. But as time passed, concern began to grow. Back at the Gosch home, Johnny's father realized that his son should have returned by now. Sensing that something was wrong, he decided to retrace the route himself. What he discovered sent shockwaves through the family. Johnny's red wagon sat abandoned only a few blocks from home. Newspapers remained inside, undelivered, but Johnny himself was nowhere to be found. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no discarded clothing, no blood, no indication of where he had gone. It was as though the 12-year-old had simply vanished into thin air. The Gosch family immediately contacted local authorities. Yet, according to later accounts, the response was not as urgent as one might expect today. During the early 1980s, law enforcement agencies often approached missing child reports differently. Many cases involved runaways, leading investigators to assume that children frequently left home voluntarily. The concept of a stranger abduction occurring in a seemingly safe suburban neighborhood had not yet become deeply embedded within public consciousness. Johnny's mother, Noreen Gosch, would later criticize the initial investigation, arguing that valuable time had been lost during those crucial early hours. She believed stronger action should have been taken immediately after her son's disappearance was reported. Whether a faster response would have changed the outcome remains impossible to determine, but the frustration experienced by the Gosch family became a defining aspect of the case. As investigators interviewed witnesses and gathered evidence, the possibility of kidnapping moved to the forefront. The reports involving suspicious vehicles and unknown individuals attracted particular attention. Sketch artists worked with witnesses to create composite drawings. Officers pursued leads throughout Iowa and neighboring states. Yet despite extensive efforts, no arrests were made. The trail grew cold with alarming speed. Johnny's disappearance soon captured national attention. Americans were deeply unsettled by the idea that a child could vanish while performing an ordinary task in a familiar neighborhood. Parents across the country saw reflections of their own children in Johnny's story. If such a tragedy could happen in West Des Moines, perhaps it could happen anywhere. Then, less than 2 years later, another Iowa paperboy disappeared under similarly disturbing circumstances. On August 12, 1984, 13-year-old Eugene Martin vanished while delivering newspapers in Des Moines. Like Johnny, Eugene disappeared during the early morning hours. Like Johnny, he was never found. The similarities between the two cases intensified public fear and prompted speculation about whether a serial offender had targeted young newspaper carriers. Although investigators never established a confirmed connection between the disappearances, many people remained convinced that the cases were linked. Parents who had once encouraged responsibility and independence now reconsidered whether children should deliver newspapers alone. The perception of safety that had defined many American suburbs during previous decades began to erode. One of the most lasting impacts of Johnny Gosch's disappearance involved the broader movement to improve awareness regarding missing children. Johnny became one of the first missing children whose photograph appeared on milk cartons distributed across the United States. Millions of Americans encountered his face during breakfast each morning. The campaign aimed to harness everyday routines in the service of public awareness. The Milk Carton Initiative marked a turning point in how missing child cases were presented to the public. Families gained new tools to spread information. Communities became more engaged in search efforts. The visibility surrounding cases like Johnny's helped fuel broader conversations about child safety, investigative practices, and legislative reform. For Johnny's family, however, awareness campaigns offered little comfort. The passage of time failed to diminish the uncertainty surrounding his disappearance. Without answers, they remained trapped between hope and grief. Every phone call carried the possibility of news. Every reported sighting reignited emotional turmoil. Over the years, numerous individuals claimed to have seen Johnny. Some reports originated from neighboring states. Others emerged from distant locations across the country. One particularly notable account involved a woman in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who reportedly encountered a frightened boy seeking help. According to the story, the child identified himself as Johnny Gosch before being quickly escorted away by two men. Despite investigative efforts, the lead could not be substantiated. As decades passed, theories concerning Johnny's fate multiplied. Some investigators and observers believed he had fallen victim to a lone predator acting opportunistically. Others suspected a more organized offender who deliberately targeted paperboys. Still others embraced elaborate conspiracy theories involving trafficking networks and high-level cover-ups. The most controversial chapter in the Johnny Gosch case emerged in 1997, 15 years after his disappearance. Noreen Gosch publicly claimed that Johnny had visited her home during the night. According to her account, a man in his late 20s appeared at her doorstep accompanied by another unidentified individual. Noreen stated that she immediately recognized the visitor as her son. She later described an emotional conversation lasting approximately 90 minutes. According to Noreen, Johnny claimed he had survived years of abuse after being abducted and forced into circumstances beyond his control. He allegedly explained that publicly revealing his identity would place him in danger. After sharing details of his experiences, he reportedly departed before dawn. The extraordinary nature of Noreen's account generated intense debate. Supporters argued that a mother would recognize her own child regardless of the passage of time. Skeptics pointed to the absence of corroborating evidence. Law enforcement agencies neither confirmed nor validated the claim. Johnny's father expressed doubts regarding the story. Yet Noreen maintained her position consistently throughout subsequent years. Regardless of public opinion concerning the alleged reunion, few questioned the depth of Noreen's devotion to her son. She transformed personal tragedy into activism, advocating tirelessly on behalf of missing children and their families. She testified before lawmakers, participated in awareness initiatives, and pushed for improvements in investigative procedures. Her determination reflected the painful reality faced by countless families navigating unresolved disappearances. Cases lacking definitive conclusions occupy a unique place within public consciousness. Unlike solved crimes, they resist closure. Questions linger indefinitely. People revisit witness statements, re-examine evidence, and wonder whether overlooked details might someday unlock the truth. The disappearance of Johnny Gosch exemplifies this phenomenon. Each generation discovers the case anew, drawn by the unsettling combination of ordinary circumstances and enduring mystery. Technological advances have transformed investigative capabilities since 1982. DNA analysis, digital databases, facial reconstruction software, and interstate communication systems now provide resources unimaginable during Johnny's childhood. Cases once considered unsolvable have yielded answers through persistent efforts and scientific innovation. Yet despite these advancements, Johnny's disappearance remains unresolved. Perhaps the reason this case continues to resonate lies in its familiarity. Johnny was not hiking through a remote wilderness or traveling through dangerous territory. He was delivering newspapers in his own neighborhood. He was engaged in a routine activity associated with responsibility and normalcy. The abrupt transition from ordinary life to unexplained disappearance challenges assumptions about safety and predictability. For the Gosch family, the emotional consequences extended far beyond the initial days of searching. Ambiguous loss differs profoundly from conventional bereavement. Without confirmation of death or survival, families struggle to define their reality. Hope persists alongside despair. Birthdays arrive without celebration. Holidays unfold beneath the shadow of absence. Time moves forward while unanswered questions remain frozen in place. Today, more than 40 years after Johnny Gosch vanished, investigators continue to receive occasional tips. Researchers revisit archival materials. Documentaries explore competing theories. Amateur sleuths debate witness statements and timelines. Yet the fundamental mystery remains unchanged. What happened during those early morning hours on September 5, 1982? Who approached Johnny near the newspaper drop point? Were the suspicious sightings connected to his disappearance? Could critical evidence have been overlooked? And perhaps most importantly, is there still someone alive who knows the truth? The disappearance of Johnny Gosch altered the landscape of missing child investigations in the United States. It contributed to greater awareness, inspired policy discussions, and encouraged families to advocate for stronger protections. Yet beyond its historical significance lies a deeply human story. A 12-year-old boy left home expecting to complete his newspaper route. His parents expected him back for breakfast. Neither expectation was fulfilled. The image remains haunting in its simplicity. A quiet suburban street before sunrise. Bundles of newspapers waiting to be delivered. A small red wagon abandoned beside the road. The realization that a normal Sunday morning had transformed into every parent's worst nightmare. Years became decades, but certainty never arrived. Perhaps one day new evidence will emerge. Perhaps advances in investigative science will provide answers previously beyond reach. Perhaps someone burdened by knowledge will finally decide to speak. Until then, the story of Johnny Gosch endures as one of America's most troubling unsolved disappearances, reminding us that behind every missing person's case exists not only mystery, but also enduring love, relentless hope, and the painful absence of truth.